To start this job, we're gonna get underneath the front of the vehicle. We're gonna go ahead and remove this plate. You're gonna find some 10mm headed bolts. Remove them all. Now that we have the shield out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our pipe. It's a good idea to spray everything with some penetrant to help remove it. I went ahead and sprayed down my O2 sensor. We're gonna follow that wire right up to where it connects in and disconnect it. There's a little tab on it. Let's just go ahead and squeeze on it and separate the two areas. Once you have it apart, you wanna make sure that you inspect the wiring. Make sure you don't see any funny colors. Next, let's remove this O2 sensor. Slide this right over the O2 sensor. Inspect your O2 sensor, make sure it looks like it's still in good conditions. The threaded area is the most important. This looks good, set it aside. Also, we're going to be removing a second O2 sensor, so put this someplace and leave a note saying this is your downstream O2 sensor. Now let's follow that pipe back to its connection point. We're going to remove our two mounting nuts. There's one here, one right up there. Just going to have to use this twisty socket on mine because my nut's rotted. Now let's move along to removing our lower bolts for this shield. You're gonna find one here and then kind of one on the other side, sort of on the front. We're gonna go ahead and remove the pair of those, then we'll get the oil filter off of here. There's that one. Okay, I found the front one. I'm gonna go ahead and get this off of here as well. When we remove the oil filter, there will be oil that comes out. Make sure you have a collection bucket. Now, if you're doing an oil change as well, you can go ahead and recycle this filter. If not, we're gonna make sure that we keep it in good condition. Back up along the top, let's continue on by removing this right here. Grab that after. This one. Let's follow that O2 sensor wire to its connection point. Squeeze that tab and release it. Obviously, inspect it, like I said before. Check for corrosion. Assuming it looks good, we'll just set it aside. You can grab onto this shield right here. We're going to try to get it up and over. We want to try to get our O2 sensor wire out of there. Just going to slide it right through. Okay, slide this to the side. Now I'm going to use my O2 sensor socket here with a long extension and a big old ratchet. See if I can get it in here. Sometimes what people might want to do is remove the fan. You can do that if you want to be able to access this. Try to spin it out of here. All right. Tool out of there. Fortunately, my hand has to be. Inspect it, make sure it's in good condition, put it someplace, and remember that this is the upstream O2 sensor. So now what we're going to do is start removing our manifold mounting nuts. You're going to find some studs that come from the engine, and they're going to come straight through the manifold, through this ear right here. Then you'll have some mounting nuts right on there. There should be one here, one towards the center, and then one up right here. The others, we're going to be getting from underneath the vehicle. We're going to come right here, right there, and then the other one's located right there. Now I'm going to start with the center nut here. You can start with whichever one you'd like. I also like to apply a little bit of heat to the area. Generally helps get these nuts off of there. see if it's hot. There we are. Now for us, it started removing the stud, so I'm going to have to go ahead and remove the nut from the mounting stud and then reinsert the stud when I'm done. There it is. All right, this one we got only the nut. Let's continue on to doing the last upper one, and then we'll get back underneath the vehicle. Now from back underneath the vehicle, we're going to start removing our mounting nuts. You're going to be able to see two of them on the passenger side, and then once we're done those, over on the driver's side of the catalytic converter, we'll be able to remove the last one. There's that one. Now I'm just going to take one of my manifold nuts and I'm just going to start it right on the stud. You can put it on any one you want. Now we're going to remove the forward bracket on the catalytic converter. You're going to find two bolts. There's one right here and there's one located right on the other side. Let's use our 10mm socket. Get it on there. There's one. There's the other one. Grab that bracket. Now we're going to remove the rearward part of the bracket. I'm going to come right here. There's one bolt, and then right there, there's a second. Remove the pair. Remove that bracket, set it aside. All right, let's get that nut off of there again. Now we can grab the manifold. We're going to carefully bring it down and forward. We also want to start removing this area back here. There it is, friends. Now with that out of the way, we can grab onto our gasket. We're going to be replacing this. Just match it up with the new one once we get it down. Set that aside. Now commonly you're going to want to make sure that you replace your manifold studs. All the studs that are coming out of your engine generally should be replaced, but if you're not replacing them either way, I recommend removing them. That way there you can sand down the engine block where the manifold's supposed to be. To do that, I'm just going to use a 5mm socket, put it right on the stud right here, and see if we can get these out. Okay. Now once you have your stud out, you're going to want to analyze it if you're not replacing it. Make sure that the threaded area is in good condition. I'm going to go ahead and clean these up. We'll get them all out of here, and then we'll continue. Now, if when you were removing your hardware, you found that removing the nut took out the entire stud, you're going to want to separate those two before you get ready for your install. I'm just going to go ahead and take my locking pliers, come right in that center area there, being very careful not to damage any of the threads on my stud. Get these as tight as possible. Now let's remove the nut. Sometimes you have to heat up the nut a little bit. There we are. Get that right off of there. Now that we have the studs out of the way, let's continue on with a nice sanding block and some sandpaper and get this nice and cleaned up. Get off all this carbon that you see on there. Now, as you can tell, I cleaned up the entire engine where that gasket's going to be, and I also cleaned up the studs themselves. The entire threaded area on all 6 of my studs is perfectly clean. Now at this point, you can just start putting these in. You can put them into any one you want. I'm just going to start them all in. Once they're all started, we'll snug them up, bottom them out, and then we'll torque them to 177 inch-pounds. Now we can put on our gasket. Should pretty much only go on one way as long as all the studs line up. That feels good. Next, we're going to move along to this area right here. Just go ahead and sand this up. Make sure it's in good condition as well. Now let's put our donut gasket on here. Should fit on fairly well. We can take our catalytic converter, start sliding it up into position here. As we start putting it over the studs along the front of the engine, let's also line up the lower aspect of it at the same time. I'm going to set this so it's sitting flush up against the engine. Take a couple of my mounting nuts, hold them on there. Now at this point, I'm just going to continue on by starting all of my nuts on the studs. Once they're all started, we'll bottom them out, and then we're going to torque them in a sequence to 177 inch-pounds. All right, I have them all started. The next thing that I want to do is just go ahead and snug them up. When I do this, I'm going to do this in a very specific sequence. I'm going to start from the center, down here. I'll do the top one in the center, and then I'll move along to each ear. I'll do one on this ear on the passenger side, one on the driver's side, and then of course we'll continue on to tightening up the other two. Now I'm going to torque this to 177 inch-pounds. There's one. Do the top one up there. Good? Mm-hmm. Now we can move down along here. We're going to go ahead and start on our brand new nuts. Both of these on here. Then we'll snug them up and torque them to 30 foot-pounds. You'll notice as I start tightening these, it's going to start pulling this down to one side or the other. You only want to bring it down a little bit, come up here, do the same, and then continually bring them both in at the same time so there's the same gap along the top and the bottom. Now we're going to get ready to install our bracket. First, I like to clean it up. A lot of times you're going to see a lot of large chunks on there. Just try to get them off. Now let's get this bracket on there. And now it fits. There we are. Let's get this lined up. Start in both of these bolts. Now we can get this portion on there. Just bring it right around that catalytic converter, get it lined up, start in both of your bolts. Let's torque these to 177 inch-pounds. Now we're going to put in our downstream O2 sensor. I always like to use a little bit of copper never seize just along the threaded area there. Carefully screw this in, bottom it out by hand. Now we'll snug it with our ratchet. You can feel that it just bottomed out right there. Give it a little bit more. Just want to make sure it's nice and tight. Now we can plug it in. Just going to come right up here. I can find my wiring harness. Listen for a click, give it a nice tug, make sure it's secure. Get this back into where it belongs as well. Hopefully. Now we're going to take the manifold shield and just put it up so it's close to in place. We're not going to necessarily start bolting it in yet because we still need to put in the upstream O2 sensor first. Okay. I've got this up there now. Just make it so it'll stay and then we can get back up top. Time to install the upstream O2 sensor. This is the one with the shorter wire. Squeeze my hand down in here. Got it bottomed out. Now I'm going to take that wire, I'm going to put it through the hole that's in that heat shield. Start pulling it through. Carefully slide the shield up and over your O2 sensor, being very careful not to damage it in any way. Grab the slack from that wire. Let's get our shield in position and start in these two bolts. Other one. Let's plug in this O2 sensor. Try to line it up. Give it a squeeze, listen for a click, give it a tug. Now that we have both of these started, let's leave them just as they are. We're going to get underneath the car, start in the other two, and then we can snug them all up. Okay, both of those are tight. Now we can move along to reinstalling our oil filter. Make sure you wipe down the base so it's free and clear of any debris around the area. And grab that oil filter, we'll start it on there. Make sure it's nice and snug. Wipe down the area. Now we can get our shield on here. Pay attention to the rear aspect. You've got a little hook. It needs to go over this right there. Slide it up and over. Now we can start lining up all of our bolt holes. I'll just start in the front here. Start them all in before you snug any of them up. Okay, so at this point we've gotten the catalytic converter completely installed. The next thing that you want to think about is the fact that we went ahead and we lost some oil when we removed that oil filter. So what we want to do is just quickly start up the car, let it run for approximately 5 to 10 seconds and then turn it off. Make sure you're on a flat and level surface and double check that oil level. If it seems as though it's low, just go ahead and top it off with some clean 520 oil. And then once you've done that, the next thing that you're going to want to do is just go ahead and start up the car again. We're going to let it run for a couple minutes, and essentially we just want to make sure we don't have any exhaust leaks. You're going to be checking right up along the front of the engine where the manifold connects onto it. We also want to go down underneath the vehicle, and you want to check that gasket as well. Make sure that our down pipe from the manifold isn't leaking where it meets up with the Y pipe down there.